Jeremiah over here hates money, so I guess we get to talk about that today.
We can talk about that. We should also talk about Noah and Social Snowball a little bit. Those guys.
Yeah, I'm going to. Well, he's going to come on the podcast next week.
Perfect. Yeah,
and I might be in person with him because we're celebrating in Ibiza.
Sick.
So,
oh, dude,
yeah,
that would be fun. Actually, I'm actually mostly upset though that he didn't ask to break the news on our podcast. Right? I feel like he let us down a little bit.
Honestly, he's been. I've kind of known about the deal for like a couple months now, and he's been pretty MIA all across the board. So I think the last few months to get like the deal over the finish line, it's been a lot. But yeah, now he's filthy rich, so it's great.
Yeah, it's good for him. He didn't quite get to your 50 though that you talk about.
He's doing all right.
Yeah, I'm not worried for him. So yeah,
I think he'll be fine.
Yeah,
he's also like crazy young too. Like,
I know.
He's younger than, he's like very young. So
you gotta fill me invoice. Like, what was it? An acquisition that went over the finish line, or for a good friend of yours? Sick.
Yeah, it's a company called Social Snowball, bootstrapped, and they just sold to a public company for like 35 million. So
good for them. Sick.
Great.
Yeah, for a bootstrapped outcome, that's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw him comment that it was all cash too, which is actually like kind of unheard of.
Yeah,
what?
It was all cash.
The public company, 100% cash deal. Like I would not have expected that.
It was all cash at signature.
We'll let him divulge
We'll
all the details.
We'll let him talk about it.
But I mean, I'll just say for him, like that was an important piece. Like there was other deals that weren't that. So
good for him.
Yeah. But Niels, do you want to do like a quick intro for the pod, and then we can kind of get into our topics?
Sure thing. Curious to hear what your questions are, gentlemen. But generally, first of all, very excited to be here. SaaS Operators Podcast. I think it's a perfect match just because we're running a SaaS company called Perspective.co. It's a funnel builder at the end of the day, a marketing platform, bootstrapped within 4 years to 10 million in ARR, primarily within the German-speaking market, now moving over as well into international markets. And primarily have done so through paid advertising, which I think we can maybe get into the nitty-gritty of today. My name is Niels, CMO at that company, primarily running that paid ads function. So yeah, maybe there's one or two things I can share about that. So
I think the craziest thing, I think we met maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe somewhere around that time. And you guys were on the trajectory to hit like the 10 million ARR. And then like the crazy footnote to that is that most of it was like German market. It's like 10 million ARR bootstrapped only inside of Germany, which is like incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like by now it's a couple million also from the international markets. But dude, like that was also honestly our biggest ambition in general. It's like when we can win so much market share within that niche market specifically. Like if we play it right and if we continue building a great product, we can also do that internationally. And so that's the bigger challenge that we're focusing on right now. But it's also been like super interesting for us coming from the German market, right? And also having the team primarily in Germany. We had to learn so many new things about what's actually going on in the global leagues, and also what the expectation towards the product is and marketing and all the good stuff. So it's fun journey.
Yeah, that's awesome.
This is wild. You got to 10 million in Germany?
In Germany, yes, sir. And only started internationalizing also this year. Like we have had that thought and we have had the idea like, hey, like, damn, we need to somehow break out of this market for a long, long time. Yeah, it was quite tough for us to burn the boats, It's like it was a pro and con. Like it was cool that we grew so big within a specific market. But of course, like it's also difficult to let go of that, especially if we want to stay small and if we don't want to take on big funding or anything like that, also fully bootstrapped. So we had to rearrange our resources quite aggressively earlier this year, but it's been paying off quite nicely so far.
Yeah. And your pricing,
I cannot believe. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's me and Jeremiah did the same thing. I cannot believe that you're charging people $1,000 a year and you're only in Germany and you're at a $10 million run rate. None of this makes any sense to me.
Because of the average revenue per
user.
Did
you just like create people in Germany?
Dude, like we, so one thing that actually was pretty neat back in the day is that the recruiting market is quite huge here. So in general, like our software, what do you use our software for? You use the software for lead gen, right? And within lead gen, there are subsegments, one of which is and was recruiting, specifically in Germany. Like people just need to hire many people here. And there was this trend of recruiting agencies going on. And we basically became the go-to tool for that and just rode that wave. And that was definitely a huge swing for us back then, because it was pretty much like we were able to have to create a category of one, basically, because that, like, we saw that trend emerging from within our smaller customer base. And when we continued to double down on that, did lots of educational material on it as well. Like that was literally what helped us go as far. Yeah.
That you talked about paid ads. I'm actually really curious on, is that kind of like, was your whole paid ad strategy built around that? Like that sort of funnel, the idea of, getting the right educational content in front of people, that kind of stuff. Like, it'd be interesting to hear what that looks like. Cause also like driving like $10 million with paid ads in a smaller market is also, and I'm curious how you think about like market saturation and all that too.
Yeah. So the reason for why we also had to move out of that market is just because it's been stagnating a little bit for us, right? It's like what is the next biggest piece to it? It could be raising average revenue per user, adjusting pricing, like these types of plays that you could do to still squeeze the market. But in terms of new customer acquisition, actually growing the top of funnel, growing the user base, it just made sense to focus on new geolocations. And of course, like through paid ads, like you guys know, right? It's like even if you have a primary channel that brings in users, there's loads and loads of things that happen on the sites. Like there's people recommending the product, there's distribution from the product itself. Like specifically, for example, in a solution like ours, where it's always customer facing in a sense with the funnel, right? So there's of course a lot of extra wind coming with that, but the primary function was always paid ads, and especially. Like I think it's actually quite unusual that paid ads is one of the biggest growth channels specifically for bootstrapped, like in general in SaaS, and then specifically for bootstrap companies, because like if you are running a SMB B2B SaaS, the main constraint is always cash flow, right? Because if you bring in a user looking at our pricing, what's it going to be? It's going to be a couple of hundreds a month maximum. At least at first, for the wider user base. And so we had to figure out how can we bypass that cash flow restraints. And we've done so by, for example, building webinar funnels, which are running to this state where we're selling yearly plans upfront and basically are profitable on the front end. So we don't even have a payback period on these, and basically acquire lots of subscriptions for free for that, because the entire subscription revenue that comes from the sidelines, essentially, because the funnel in itself is profitable, that's additional, and that's driving a lot of growth as well. So
that's exactly what Monday did. You know that, right?
Is that the case? No, I didn't actually.
Yeah. So Monday. Do you guys know the Monday.com story by any chance?
Not specifically, no.
So you should study it, Niels. I think it'll be like super interesting for you. But basically, they funded their growth because even though their customer acquisition was more expensive than their 3-month revenue or 6-month revenue, it was less than their 12-month, and they were getting people to swipe the card for the whole year. And so you're always running ahead of your like gap realized revenue, but because your cash flow is good, you can use your cash flow to fund your growth. Mm-hmm. And so they were like doing this constantly, basically. Yeah. And in like some cases they were running really hot. So they were like so they raised capital, and then they overextended on the capital raise because they were like so confident. And so it's like one of the very few B2B SaaS companies that it's grown basically entirely on paid ads.
Interesting, man.
And you like talk to their investors, like their Series A, Series B investors. They were just like, yeah, like we were like pulling our eyeballs out because of like how scary it was to like see how much reliance there was on paid ads. Yeah. It's you should study it. And there's like a few podcasts with the founders. It's very interesting.
The same thing is happening in e-commerce all the time. I mean, in recurring business as well. Like Hims, I think they spent 57 or 67% of top line revenue on marketing, right? And assuming that they're marketing to new customers, and there's a huge amount of that revenue that's in returning customer revenue, they're just dumping it all into new customer acquisition, right?
I was curious if you're able to talk about like the a little bit more specifically about the economics of how all that worked too, because I think that'd be really interesting. What did it look like in terms of cost to acquire a customer? Like how much are you discounting to get somebody to say yes to an annual upfront, all those kinds of things?
Yeah, 100%. I can definitely share a bunch of details. Maybe not all of them, but essentially, specifically on the discount question. So we are also like looking at our competitors in general. We are definitely positioned a little bit more on the premium side of things in terms of our pricing. And we also didn't do any heavy discounting. Essentially, like the annual plans that we're selling on these webinars, on these funnels, is 30% discounted from the monthly. If you extrapolate the monthly by 12, essentially. And our yearly plans are discounted by 20. So you're basically shaving off an extra 10%. But we do like, that's also what our DNA is, right? So perspective, for those of you that don't know, we were basically running an agency before we have built that SaaS company. And we took the agency money to go and fund it and actually allow us to go and build that product. But what I wanted to say is that paid ads and in general, like internet marketing was definitely within our DNA. And so we also figured out what are other ways to build an offer that is actually interesting to people that have never heard of us. So the only two touch points have been, okay, they saw an ad, they registered through our funnel. Now they're coming to that webinar. How can we make sure that they're actually able to give us $1.5 to $2.5 basically on the spot? And we do things like bundling offers, right? So there's maybe some media products added to it. We do run a community. There's courses added to it. I mean, Zach, we're in a similar market, right? But both focusing on ad agencies. And there's like huge businesses also within info. And since SaaS always has a service component to some extent because you got to make your users successful, right? We do bundle that, for example, into the offer where we make that inevitably more valuable without necessarily shaving off more in terms of the actual cash that we're getting back. So that was definitely one of the levers for even making that profitable and making that work.
Just to make sure I understand, the cost, it is roughly this kind of math where the cost of acquisition is less than that 1 year revenue, basically. Right. And then you just like keep running that month over month. And then and then the cash flows work basically.
Yeah. The beauty of it, and that is like traditionally, like if you're running any type of sales or marketing for a SaaS company, what metrics are you looking at? You're looking at cost per acquisition as like the main metric for measuring how effective your marketing is. And then you're measuring that against your average revenue per user per month, right? Which is your payback period, essentially. And so then you have within SMB B2B SaaS, you're looking at like, or investors might say, if you're under 6 months payback period, that's sick. Maybe under 12 months, that's sick. What we do is we run traffic to this funnel. We basically, within a week, we recoup that money, but we have 100 to 200 trials acquired extra that are essentially all free now. So we made that money back and these 200 trials convert to paying customers. So that is all profit, just looking like if you were just looking at that acquisition motion, right? That is the idea. Of course, like reality is some weeks are more profitable, some weeks are less profitable. But in general, that's like over the long haul, that pretty like works pretty well.
One interesting thing is that when you told me the whole like German market thing, I was like blown away. But then I remember I looked at our distribution of customers, and we have like a highly concentrated customer base in Germany.
People love you over here, dude. Yes.
So one question I have is, what the fuck is going on in Germany, and why do they like so? and like it's just weird. Like population size, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense.
It's a strong market, man. That's what it is. There's lots of agencies specifically within our market, right? There's many agencies that are super successful over here, and yeah, strong economy, I would say.
How big is the average company in Germany?
Dude, I wouldn't know, honestly. I wouldn't know. But I would say decently sized, yeah.
Decently sized? Is there a lot of small companies in Germany?
Lots of small companies as well, yes. Yeah.
I don't have exact numbers off the top of my head, but I know that for us in the Shopify, like our customers being Shopify customers, we, Shopify merchants, Germany is one of our top markets as well. So it's behind.
There you go.
It's right around the same level as like Australia for us. And a little bit behind the UK, I believe. It's right in that, but it's in that range. Like the US is the lion's share. And then after that, it's like Canada, UK, Germany, and Australia are all kind of in the same area.
I remember when I was drop shipping, I knew this one kid that was like drop shipping globally, and he was like doing okay. And then he'd noticed that he was just like performing better in Germany. And so he converted all of his stores to only selling in Germany, and he like tripled his revenue. It was like, it makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. And he was selling like Lego, like a Lego competitor.
Yeah. So I know a couple of friends within the e-com space that are within the health/supplement niche, and they're only focusing on Germany and do more than 9 figures.
Dude, crazy. It's got to be the case. None of this makes any sense to me.
Germany's a rich country.
Is it? Well, the only way this can make any sense at all is that it's a rich country with people who want stuff, and so they're willing to pay for software and services because there aren't other people. So like, the inverse of this, for example, is India, where people don't want to pay for software and services because there's so many people, right? And so like you can replace with labor that which you would otherwise buy with software. And so the only way any of this makes any sense is the population constraint, but the demand for a high quality of life means that you have this very high spend power population, which is why I was asking the like size of business question, because it would also then lead to leaner businesses that where you have like a small team that's able to do a lot. Like I have no, actually, how many people is your guys' team?
We're 40 people by now.
Oh my God, dude, stop it. You're 40 people bootstrapped at 10 million ARR selling only in Germany.
Well, we started now selling outside of Germany.
How much do you spend on SaaS?
On SaaS, like our SaaS subscriptions?
Yeah. How much do you spend on SaaS?
Dude, I don't know exactly. But
it must be a lot.
We do pay a good sum, 100%. Yeah. Totally.
A lot of it's German.
Honestly, I don't even think so. But we do, like, specifically in marketing, like we do have a bunch of German SaaS providers that we also use, but also because I honestly enjoy supporting like smaller SaaS companies within Germany as well. It's like something to it to me, especially when it's young founders. But we like a majority of our team also is the product team, right? So the marketing team, we're 6 people by now, but majority is products, because like if there's one thing that we really, really care about, is building the best freaking product. I think like every SaaS founder, every SaaS company would say that, but especially in a crowded market like ours, it's the number one priority. Maybe Rishab, I think for you would be a great market at some point as well.
I mean, I think I'm just more like, I'm so much more interested in the shape of the company than I am, because like 40 people doing this amount of revenue, I would be very curious. I don't know if you can find out later and then send it in the show notes, like how much you guys spend on SaaS. But I've got to imagine that what's happening is you have built a very high leverage organization. Because like 6 people running your marketing, do you guys use agencies on top of the 6 people running your marketing department?
We do have 2 agencies, yeah. But like goal would be also to, like, in general, most of the functions I want to get in-house in general, yeah. But 2 agencies.
And is each of the people on your marketing team like automating their job aggressively, like every week, every month?
Not enough, man. Not enough. Like, honestly, I would, like, if we just look at at the day-to-day work, I would say like there's so much more opportunity looking at AI and everything in terms of leveraging ourselves and leveraging the specific job that we're doing. But yeah, of course, like the main leverage, right? Specifically within the function that we're running, the main leverage is also capital leverage and the cash flow that we're generating, right? Like we wouldn't have been able to grow as fast if we wouldn't have figured out how to spin money around effectively, right? That is the main thing in this case. And so, yeah, of course, different types of leverage, but like in terms of tech leverage and AI leverage, lots more to be done, definitely.
I'm just saying, I've always wanted to get our paid efficiency to like where Niels is, because it's like, that is like the ultimate leverage. Like if all you have to do is type in a bigger number and get more customers, and obviously there's more that goes into that, but like it's type in a bigger number at the end of the day. And if like the machine on the back end is like allowing you to keep making that number larger, like it's the best leverage you could ever have.
Totally, man. And that's also why I'm excited if I can somehow help you figure out how to do that. Because as I said, like in general within Germany also, your product is big. I know you do have many trials coming through either way. But I think paid would be a super sick thing to leverage on your end, 100%.
Yeah. I think we're just going to start only advertising in Germany.
That's the growth hack too. The growth hack, yeah.
I'm dying to know, Niels. Are you optimizing around like annuals?
In terms of in general paid advertising?
Yeah.
We do it really depends on the funnel. We have similar what Zach just said, right? So the idea is you spin up a campaign, you have a link, you say, get me people to that link. You see, oh, there's money on the other end coming back. You dial up the number. That's the wish, right? But of course, like at the end of the day, like we do a lot of testing. So there's many different funnels as well, and not all of them are optimized towards annual, because not all of the market is ready to go and pay us a couple $1,000 to go and use the software, right? There's a big chunk of the market as well that wants to just try. That's why we have the free trial. So there's also a big part of the spend going towards free trial. But the only reason for why we're now able to do so is because we have the entire funnel dialed in the sense that we know exactly what's our trial to paid conversion rate, right? Like what channels convert best, et cetera, et cetera. You need to collect that data to have the confidence to even spend in distribution, to know that the money is coming back. And before, we didn't really know that, so we only optimized for the annual plans because we needed to make sure the cash flow is coming back. Otherwise, we would have not survived, right? So it was a very, very different place back then. So by now it's mixed, but before it was all annual.
And there's not like an 80-20. It's not more into annuals or more into free trials.
It actually depends on the season as well. Like depends on what is performing best at the moment. It's a little bit like you're rearranging your budget on the basis of where you have the best chances of success currently, right? It's like on a micro scale, you turn on and off different creative depending on what resonates right now. And on a macro scale, you budget more on the channels and the funnels that are performing the best and are bringing the most money back. So
that's cool. It changes.
And of course, you need to come up with new stuff over and over again as well, right? It's like the wish is, hey, I build a funnel, I spin it up, it works, it gets me $2 for every $1 I spend. Let me spend as much money as possible. Of course, at some point it breaks. At some point you realize, oh, this week is worse than the week before for some reason. So there's lots of things to, of course, still keep in mind. But yeah.
With your international expansion, are you primarily focused on free trials then, or is it kind of a mix of both?
We do both again. But primarily also because we had to, we realized that, first of all, like we had to learn so much about how the US works, how the UK works, right? Because like the big disadvantage of being focused on a smaller local market is you also focus on the way these people think. And we had to realize, oh, interesting, like there's a very different competitive landscape that people have in their minds. Like we knew globally what the competitive landscape was, but just the consideration of different competitors, for example, in the prospect's minds changes with geolocation, and significantly. And that's something, for example, we had to learn. So the communication shifted a lot. We had to find new funnels, but the core concepts as to how we're doing that still apply. And yeah, we're doing both.
Do you think that the value prop on recruiting is like the secret, is like the secret underneath the growth? Because yeah, again, like the total penetration amount is so large that it's like remarkable. Is it just that you found this use case that other people just would not have thought of, and you're like now going into these other markets and you're realizing like, wow, that like I can't think of a single company that serves that use case in the US, actually. I literally can't, which is crazy, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, you just have to, I mean, how do you like resonate with that use case here? Like that's a hard problem, but I don't know anyone filling that need. Like I literally don't.
And most likely we are also not going to fill that need within the US actually. So that is also like our product, right? You can use Perspective for so many different things. Like if you care to do that, you could do that like for your local club, you could spin up a survey, right? Like the technology would be like, you could do so many different, or have so many different use cases. And I think having figured out that recruiting use case back in Germany, that allowed us to have this very, very unique type of product market fit. Within the US, it's all of a sudden, again, way more focused on lead generation, growing your business, like running funnels to grow your business, etc. So it's most likely not going to be a big share in terms of recruiting. We have seen some demand, but the other demand is definitely way bigger so far for us, and that's what we're focusing on as well.
Really? So lead gen for SMBs or lead gen for large companies?
A lead gen for SMBs primarily. Like our main customer is Our main customer is the classic ad agency that focuses on one specific local type of business, right? For example, lead gen for bakeries or lead gen for lawyers, whatever. And they then use our software to do their entire service delivery. So that is the main use case. And that is also how we can, like, on the back end also grow into some larger ACVs, because at the end of the day, we have agencies that have use cases for huge volumes of like capacities within their accounts, right? So that's the focus.
So basically, an agency might have 100 clients and they come in and they spin up a bunch of different funnels.
Exactly.
They have to have a minimum of 100 different funnels in that context, let's say. So
correct. Yes, exactly.
Why do you think that is it just that in the US the labor market is so tight right now, so there's just not a lot of recruiting happening? Like what about the way that your product gets used does it teach you about what's happening in that country? Like, why is recruiting so big in Germany but lead gen so big in the US?
Recruiting's huge in England as well. I'm not sure why, but there's like everyone's spinning up recruitment agencies, like marketing agencies in the US.
Taking a note, but like in general, yes, we've seen also, like, depending on the country, we've seen different interests and very different use cases. For example, Netherlands, on the other hand, right, that was the first market that we expanded to, and it was basically like a one-to-one copy to the German market, but Dutch speaking, right? And so I think it's a great question, Rishab, that, like, what does the use of a product tell us about what's happening within that country? And we've done a lot of research as well, and we've tried to figure out exactly what is it going to, like, what are our chances to resonate within a specific geolocation with different types of messaging. But to be honest, like, I found that the truest form of that research is just like have 10 theses and figure out which of these resonates. And in US, the predominant one was lead gen, and is still growing your business. And so we're focusing on that.
I think it's because European businesses are lazy and they don't want to hire people themselves, so they go to recruitment agencies.
Yeah, and I figured maybe like in the US, but you guys would know more about that. Is like there's so many different ways of hiring, and maybe also way more established ways of hiring. Within Germany, like I know so many SMBs, right, where they're like, oh damn, like I don't know how to get more people. I don't know how to get more applications. I don't know how to hire the right people. And it's literally that, like, doing lead gen for recruiting, like running ads to make sure somebody that might be a fit for the job somehow sees your ad, clicks on it, applies to your job, is in many ways the most effective way to do so with the cheapest cost per hire. And I would assume maybe in the US, it's just not that way.
Yeah, I mean, I can only think of two things, which is the US labor market is really tight right now. So we have like record low unemployment, basically. And so and then the other one is that, but this must be true in Germany too, but like the total number of people who are in government jobs or government affiliated jobs is extraordinarily high. So you have like this massive bucket of government and government affiliated, and then you also have a massive bucket of independent business owners. And so the like labor dynamism in the US under a tight labor market is actually very low, which is like something that not a lot of people are, you don't generally think about, especially in tech. It feels very dynamic, but that's just not representative of the whole country.
And also within Germany, like we've seen different amount of demand in different seasons, right? So when there's a market downturn, essentially, more people also are moving into the lead gen angle because they need more customers. They want to make sure that their cash flow is safe, right? Their revenue is stable. And when the market is on an upswing, more people want to hire again. So like it was like there was one very successful campaign that we did back then where we also started to move a little bit more into international markets, but that was not still specifically for Germany, where literally the campaign was all about, okay, if you're an agency right now is the time to pivot, make sure you're doing both recruiting and lead gen. And people loved it. People loved it. And it was actually like a quite a decent boost back before we then shifted full focus on other markets.
On the point of like the employment funnels, I wonder too if part of it's just like in the US we have different maybe there's just a different mindset around how people apply for jobs and where you go. And we've got Indeed, we've got all these different things, which maybe is also true in Germany. I have no idea, but like that may actually change the way people go about applying for jobs. And if the way that, and also I think there's probably a massive difference too in the way that like running a tech company, I recruit people differently than if I owned a small business with a storefront, right? Like that's going to be different too. So it could just be that there's like enough nuance there with how things are different in the US versus Germany that it just doesn't make as much sense for a US business.
Niels, why'd you guys bootstrap?
Why? Because first of all, what we truly value is the freedom that we have. And it's going to stay that way. We have many, many friends that didn't bootstrap, and we have decided before that this is the way we want to continue to do it. We want to maintain that freedom. We want to be able to shape the product into what we truly believe is the best way forward. We want to run the company in the way we want to run it, and we also, want to be, like at the end of the day, we want to be free. At the same time, like we've been also very, very profitable, although paid ads is like a big expense on our P&L. And the main challenge would then still be like, how can we deploy more capital? Because like we have our principles also in terms of wanting to, for example, grow efficiently. Like if we were to take on funding, what would it be invested in? Most likely two things. First of all, like getting the best people on the job, right? Making sure like we have the best freaking team, because we're actually on a like globally very competitive mission. And then second thing is user acquisition. I think at the end of the day, we like within the financial situation that we're in, like we still have so much more opportunity to max that out and to efficiently like spend that money before it would even make sense for us to consider getting capital, because that is just not our problem.
Yeah, the only reason to raise I mean, for what little it's worth, not that you need my input, but the I think that your cash payback cycles are the thing that determine whether or not you need to raise money for what little it's worth. Like the fact that you guys have such high efficiency on your cash flow of CAC to then payback based on the way that you have set it up, like that. Yeah, I mean, by definition, when you talked about customer acquisition, you were talking about more of that same cycle. The only reason it won't work is if for some reason that cycle changes. So I'm making something up, but let's just say you started to sell an enterprise deal where the cycle, like you have to hire salespeople and it's going to take finite time before the cash comes in the door. It's like, yes, that cash conversion cycle is what is the definition of what requires investment, right? And so
good point.
That's like the only way that I could even imagine that you would even in the future consider it. Again, not saying that that's good or bad, but I get it. It makes a bunch of sense.
Yeah, but it's a very good thought, man. And like I honestly, like in terms of our entire GTM function, including sales, and we do have two salespeople on the team as well, but they're more focused on expansion right now. It's not necessarily the acquisition side of things. And I think at some point, if we decide to move up market, which I think is a viable option as well for us in the future, then yes, definitely that will be a different conversation maybe. But also depends on what situation we're in then when we make that decision.
Yeah, because if you're, like Rashad, in your case, I don't, let's say you're trying to close a $500,000 deal and it costs you 6 months worth of the revenue, first year revenue in order to get that deal done. Like you probably have high confidence that's a multi-year deal at that point. You feel good about it closing, but if it's going to cost you $250,000 to close it, like you probably don't just have that capital sitting around if you haven't raised money. So
first of all, that never happens, Jeremiah. It costs you. It costs you more like $750,000 to $1 million to close a first year $500,000 deal. So like
so it's even worse.
The math is totally off. Yeah. Because the whole point is that you have more confidence that it's more sticky, right? And so it's like that. It's like $500,000 year one, 1 million year two, like 2 million year three, and so you're like talking about $3.5 million over 3 years, and so you're gonna like spend $750,000, which is where your cash conversion gets totally messed up.
The math absolutely makes sense, but you're like, there's no way you get that money back even in a year in that context.
I mean, look at Wiz. I mean, this like what I just described to you is Wiz. They had to spend ridiculous sums of money to sign people in the first year, with the knowledge that the contracts were going to grow in the out years, and it worked. But it takes like a serious. I mean, they raised ridiculous sums of money to make that work.
Ram.com would be another case, exactly the same thing, where it's like huge contracts and like so much investment into the customer acquisition. But the beauty of that is like, and that's of course like if you run an SMB type business like Zach is, or like we are, right, where we are focused more on the SMB side of things and not the enterprise side of things, we don't have the beautiful thing called like 110, 120% NRR, where you know, like, okay, over the next year, it's going to be this customer that we acquired today is going to be 20% worth more next year. Like if you have that confidence, of course, that is also how these companies grow so like in such a into such a crazy size.
For us, like one of our largest churn reasons is that the person's business went out of business. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's a completely different sort of dynamic, or like it's either their business went out of business or they're not running ads anymore, which they're probably going out of business then soon. So it's like, yeah, it definitely is different.
Yeah, our NRR is like, yeah, it's like well north of that. So yeah, it totally changes the dynamics basically.
100%, yeah.
So you have a little bit of a balance between your growth and your profitability on acquisition, right? How are you setting targets for profitability on acquisition? What I mean is, you stepped on the gas pedal and you saw attrition in your efficiencies, right? And you were paying more to acquire each incremental customer, and then you hit break even. Is that the sweet spot for you, or is there a profitability on acquisition target that you're looking at?
It's a great question. So we do look at efficiency targets in terms of cost per trial, customer acquisition costs in general, and then measure that against LTV. Like if we're just looking at that free trial funnel, right? In general, we have a company profitability goal in general for the entire year and also for the month. So we do have a P&L, for example, if we see an opportunity. Let's just say we figure out this new creative, that new funnel, whatever it might be in July, and we would have the opportunity to go and spend double the amount of money than we would have spent the month before. Then that is of course a very, very different question, and you need to shift around money a little bit differently. But we have a bunch of safety mechanisms within that. So for example, this upfront revenue that we have, we want to spend. So first of all, we want to spend a maximum, for example, of 25% of our total MRR. That would be the max. That is just the upper line. We're not necessarily spending that just if performance is good and if we can like get in a bunch of customers. So that grows with the MRR that we're actually generating, and that extra MRR that is growing on the basis of our acquisition would be then funneled back into the acquisition budget based on that rule. The second rule, and that now relates more to the annual customer acquisition, is we allow ourselves to invest a chunk of that upfront cash, so the upfront ARR that we're basically generating, into the next month. And that also helps us basically.
How much of it?
Depends on how good we're feeling about the next month and about the performance that we currently have. So yeah, if for example, if there's a lot of cash flow, right? Like going back to where do you invest the money? Going back to that question, is like if we have a lot of cash and if we are confident in investing it, then we could invest 100% of it, because we know that through the upfront revenue that we've generated, there's loads and loads of trials that are coming from the sidelines that are basically free by then. If you just look at the acquisition, right? Without the marketing team costs maybe, but like just how much money we're making back on the campaigns. And so
what would happen if the rule became 100% of what you collect, you spend back in?
It would grow quite exponentially, most likely. If we, for example, like depends on how profitable the month is, right? Like if we just look on last month, if we, for example, like if we made it happen to get 2x the amount of money back that we spend, then all of a sudden, like we would be able to double that budget over the next month.
And I guess what I'm asking is, why aren't you doing that? Like, so by the way, like the reason I'm asking this is like, this is roughly what Monday did, right? Like roughly what they did is everything that they sold and that they collected up front, they just immediately reinvested into growth. And so I guess like, why would, in your system, why would that break? Or would it not break?
It would only break if we're underperforming. It would only break if we're investing sums of money and we're making less back. That is when it breaks. When the ads performance or the funnel's performance would break. But if that is not the case,
but it's self-correcting. because then the next month's 100% is going to be lower. So like it's a self-correcting system, right?
That's why it's safe. But it doesn't necessarily promise you, or doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a guaranteed way be able to double your budget over and over again. Right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
You're correct. It wouldn't break in terms of, it would be like devastating for the business, because yes, through these rules, you're in a safe space. If you're only investing what you actually have, that's a good spot to be in. But of course, if we're underperforming in a given month, then we might not grow as fast as we want to be, which is what's truly on the line. Yeah. Good question.
Man, wild
stuff. And Zach, are we spinning up your paid ads motion then together going forward, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we've been spending more now on paid ads, and then we're working together. We haven't got our first funnel up yet, but I do think that like the webinar funnel piece for us could work really well. Like even when I look at our GTM on like the sales side, which is like what we've been pushing a little bit more to with like the launch of the new product, we've noticed that like a lot of like the demo calls, a lot of the sales calls are actually demo calls and not sales calls. And so there's like potentially a chance in which we could, one, do more demo calls at greater efficiency. I mean, I will say, like, for the length that I've ran Foreplay as a company, there's like two things I've always wanted to do. One, unlock paid advertising, because it is like the highest leverage thing. And like for like a million reasons. Like one, it's like, yeah, you don't really need to hire that many more people to grow the business. And like, I also kind of miss, 1 million credit card points a month. Like that was really nice.
That is a nice side effect, dude. 100%. Yeah.
Zach says he wants to unlock paid ads, by the way, while we have like a $17 cost per booked call right now, which is not so bad.
There you go.
It could be worse.
It's definitely not bad. Yeah.
It's not bad.
The webinar strategy, is it sending people to a live webinar? Is it pre-recorded webinars, or is it kind of a combo of both?
We always start with live just because we need to figure out the messaging. We need to like read the room. We need to figure out what does actually resonate, especially for something like a new market that we're in right now for ourselves. And so we've been doing that, decently successful, and the decently successful webinar is now being automated, and then we'll be on to the next. So that is basically the process. We're doing the live one as long as that is the thing that's bringing in cash. And then we're automating that. And of course, usually automated webinars are just a little less effective. So you need to have the optimizations dialed in a little bit more. And once that's done, the question is, what's the next thing? Yeah.
I worked at a software business out of college that was focused on SMB. They acquired almost all their business through paid ads. And there was a guy who would do webinars every hour, not every hour. He'd do like 4 a day. But he actually, what he did is he would get on the call, talk for a minute, say hi to people. He'd have a pre-recorded webinar. So he'd just sit back, let it run for 30 minutes or whatever it was. And then he'd hop on at the end with questions. And it actually was like a pretty good setup where it was kind of a blend of like the live versus pre-recorded. And then there was a, hey, we missed you. Here's the recorded webinar thing that would get sent out. And yeah, it was interesting. It sounds very similar to kind of the approach that you all have taken. And it did work, but we were talking about like it was like a $20 to $40 a month subscription. I don't remember what the exact numbers were. I want to say it was like around $120 to acquire a customer in that context. But it was like when Meta was like cheap. It's not so cheap anymore. So I've always been skeptical of how well it would work in current context.
Yeah. Wait, Niels and Zach, I've got to hit you guys up after this. I want to do the same thing for Firma. I don't know what you guys are doing, but I want to do the same thing because I love ads.
Yeah, let's freaking do it, man. 100%.
Yeah,
I think the thing with ads, and it's the reason I don't think that we've like been able to scale our budget to like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month is that I don't think we've carved out enough time for testing, because like we're doing so much other stuff. I do think that I'm gonna say this to be true, right? Like the way we can potentially do this for us is almost like burn the boats on everything other acquisition thing that we should be doing. Like I think as you run like a software company, you get larger. It's like, we should be doing this sponsorship. We should be doing this. But like, it is true that like all of those things pair in comparison to the leverage you could potentially have on like paid advertising, And so I think,
and just like that, this podcast ends.
Yeah.
Just like that. in favor of
Prioritized.
static ads.
The flip side of that, though, is it's really risky, right? Like if you can't unlock it and you burn the boats, then you're in trouble.
I don't think it's that risky.
You don't think it's that risky?
Because like I would say we have no acquisition thing right now where if it like turned off tomorrow, I would be kind of scared. Like the only thing I would say, like if our website got completely delisted amongst all of like the search queries that we come up for, like that I would be like pretty worried about. Everything else, I don't think it would be like that. And that means like it goes to zero, not like, oh, we're not putting that much attention into it. So
what channels are you growing through primarily right now?
I mean, honestly, for us, it's always been SEO, and like now ChatGPT is taking some of the SEO market share. But I wouldn't say, I mean, I don't think I've ever been able to answer the question of like, where do most of your customers come from? I mean, I think the actual answer to that is share links in our product.
Do you have like a post-purchase survey installed in the app?
No, I mean, Jeremiah's should probably get one up.
There's
like so many things in our business that we like, it's kind of crazy that I don't have yet. We didn't verify emails until like 2 weeks ago. Like we didn't have email verification. Millions and millions of dollars, and I've never verified an email. And like now we have email verification. The other thing that we've never tested, and we should test it soon, is credit card upfront free trials. Because I actually think that's also a piece that would like make our paid advertising potentially grow like wildfire, is if we were collecting some revenue on the breakage of signups. Whereas right now, if someone signs up for a trial and they never come back, like we never get any money from them. So,
and that is such an important piece, man.
The reality though is that unless you're a shop with 75 million, which I'm sure, to be clear, this is probably hard for you too, but like, what do you prioritize? There's so many things to do. You can never do everything, right? So yeah, I'm sure even if you have 75 million, this is the problem. So yeah, I get it on the email verification and all those things. We also don't look for email verification, but typically you're signing up through Shopify, so that kind of helps. But then we can't contact you either because it's like an info@ email address. Yeah, it's all those, there's like so many unoptimized things that just, there's not enough time to do them.
Yeah, I think one of the tricky things with attribution, understanding where your customers come from is, where did they first come from? I'm happy we have the expert on post-purchase surveys here, because how do you deal with that recency bias?
I can definitely outline like how I think about it. Because I think I will say, like, first of all, every source of data is flawed. So that's kind of like the starting point that I have for this. So if you're looking at, let's say, Google Analytics as your source of truth, you have to understand what the bias is there. And the bias is going to be wherever somebody clicks from, that's what's going to get the credit in this context. Post-purchase surveys kind of have the opposite impact, or the opposite problem. And I actually think one of the big issues with post-purchase surveys is people aren't specific enough about what they ask. So I actually don't like the question, how did you hear about us? It's pretty general. It lets somebody, if they have multiple touch points with your business, they have to think about which one is more important to them, which is okay, but that's the bias in that question, right? You have to understand that that's that bias. And then you're asking them to interpret, is it the first time? Is it what brought me here today? Is it this thing that I saw a week ago? Like, what is that thing? So I actually really like asking the question, how did you first hear about us? Which asks the person to recall the first interaction they remember with your brand. And it's not necessarily the actual first interaction. It's the most impactful first, like early interaction with your brand that you're asking them for. And so that's what I always recommend. And that's the what we ask, because I want to know what was that thing that made you remember us. And that's where I want to invest my resources. So like on our end, we know that's agencies, marketing agencies is like the number one thing that people will recall. And so that's where we invest a lot of our resources. We haven't really ever run paid ads effectively. So who knows, that might be really good too, but it doesn't, so far hasn't played out well.
Yeah, same for us, honestly. So like post-purchase surveys, a big point for data collection, but like, especially if you scale paid advertising across different channels, like then attribution also becomes a bigger question, right? And then like to this day, and that is something I'm super, super keen on. In Reshop, you would also know a lot about that, but is incrementality testing that we have just not done so far. We have never done a geo holdout, and we basically optimize primarily on attribution in terms of specifically for making the choice on the creative. Go ahead.
Dude, that's such a flex. We've never done a geo holdout. We get it, man. You scaled in only Germany. It's not possible to do a geo holdout. I get it, you know. What a flex. We've never done a geo holdout.
It was me being vulnerable, sir, because I actually truly want to do it, and I think we're way behind for not doing it. So was the intended the other way around.
I will say, though, I actually don't think incrementality is going to, I shouldn't say it's not helpful. Like, I actually think it can be helpful, but I don't think it's going to be as helpful as you think it might, because of the fact that most of the time when it comes to software, there's a longer consideration window. And usually the things that are actually getting somebody interested in your software are happening outside of what's going to be tracked with incrementality. So I'm not saying it's totally useless, but I actually think that what you would find is that in that context, the survey is probably going to give you more interesting information. So I think like if you're showing an ad to somebody for like, I don't know, I'll pick like Olipop or something, and you're just trying to get them to like buy a 6-pack of Olipop and they just saw it for the first time, that like incrementality works well in that context. I don't think it works when somebody's on a 6-month buying timeline. So
I agree. It's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair.
The other thing, just for what little it's worth, is it would literally never work for us because we know that the top 2 things are social content and events. And it's like, you can't geo hold out social content and events. That's just like not a thing that you can do. So it's like a literal impossible thing. And in fact, when you talk, like, the number of people who have walked up to me and told me like why they bought Format is like ridiculous. And so we know that it is like these 2 things. And so, like, unlike Zach, I can't not do this podcast because like it is an important driver of why people trust a tool that is as expensive as us, right? Like the more expensive, the more you have to go on trust-based marketing channels, and trust-based marketing channels are the worst to measure because it's like, did I interact with the person? Do I feel like I know them? Like, you know, those sorts of things.
And for you, like from the time somebody gets into a sales process, it could be a year before you close that person, right? Let alone whatever happened before that. So
yeah, it's that. Luckily, we're not there yet. Like, luckily, we're not at year-long sales cycles. But yes, you like the part before that is the thing that kills us. Yeah,
guys, we have 5 minutes left. Niels, why don't you charge more?
Yes. Best question. Only good question.
Okay, so we're working on a little something. That's all I can say. It's not going to be necessarily more, but it's going to be a little different. That's all I can say. Yeah. Good question though.
Jeremiah, why don't you charge more? What are you doing with Stamped? Why you got to be like that?
Dude, we're cutting costs. We're cutting pricing. No, I think though it's also.
Wait. I have a question. You're cutting pricing as in the plans that people are purchased that they're paying for right now is going to go down in cost?
Eventually, yeah. Like the way that we're building a new product, and that product is going to eventually be better and cheaper than what we offer today. And I think like there's a few reasons for that. One is just like it's a very competitive space, and so you kind of either you go into like really investing into sales, or you find a way to make it something that's appealing at scale. So like the Sean Frank example is a great example. The brands I want to work with won't bat an eye at what we're going to charge. And then once we ultimately get that relationship, get that trust, there are other things that we're building in the future that I see as potential additional revenue drivers. But in terms of like getting you the basics in your hands, those things are going to be very affordable.
I have one question, Niels, for your free trial funnel.
Go ahead.
How much? So you guys are credit card upfront free trial. I've never tested credit card upfront free trial. What percentage of like breakage do you have on that trial? And I know we've had like conversations about people using fake cards and stuff like that in the past. And then do you consider that in your churn, or do you guys only look at churn at like 1 month post, let's call it rebill?
And with breakage, you mean trial to pay conversion or
just like people that signed up for a trial, put a credit card in, and they either canceled the trial, didn't convert, or like you charged them, but then they reached out the day after the charge. Like, how do you look at those metrics? Is it messy? Like,
Amazing question, man. And at the end of the day, like we've also struggled for a longer time to really figure out how we want to measure that. But we measure two things right now. So first of all, a customer is only a customer once they paid us $1. So that is very strict. Once they like successfully gave us money, that is when they're a customer. That's when they are called an acquired customer. And we measure two things, which is the adjusted the trial to pay conversion rate in general, and the adjusted trial to pay conversion. And the adjusted basically is the trial to pay conversion minus maybe people that reach out asking for a refund because they forgot to cancel their trial, that happens, or unsuccessful payments, thumbs up. And so we always start with that as the lowest base. So for anybody, so for any of the dunning cancellations that might come in, so the failed payments, anything where there is not a successful payment so far is not even counted towards that. So we always know what's the worst case scenario. Of course, there might be 100 customers all of a sudden reaching out saying, hey, I never wanted the subscription, please refund. But that usually doesn't happen. So that is how we measure it.
Sorry, why don't you also include they must use the platform? Just as like, do you have a usage metric before somebody becomes a customer? Or like, how do you think about payment versus usage?
It's a great question. We measure both. We measure both in terms of like the payment metric or the trial to pay conversion is just very important, primarily for that paid ads funnel. Exactly, cash flow, because that is the oxygen. But in terms of indicators for how likely is the paid conversion going to be, we have usage metrics for that. Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. This has been a really solid podcast.
Yes,
yeah, this was amazing. Yeah, this was so fun. Yeah, Niels, congrats on such an amazing business, truly. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much, gentlemen.